Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our third installment of our Employer Learning and Resource webinar series. This week, we're very excited to have the topic Developing Workplace Stability Through Living Wage and Socio-Economic Inclusivity. So I just want to kick things off by doing a quick introduction. So my name is Amanda Channon. I'm one of the job developers here at JobGym. I also have my colleague here, Ashley Cowell, who's also a job developer with our organization. Paula Nelson, who is part of our workforce development and learning team, also coordinates our Canada Ontario job grant program. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce our supervisor, Larissa Smith. Larissa is going to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement, so I'm going to turn things over to her. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Good afternoon, everyone. We begin this exciting learning opportunity by acknowledging the land on which we gather as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous peoples.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge our partners, the Niagara Reduction Poverty Network, for partnering with us on this event and tying into Living Wage Week, which was last week here in Ontario. With that, I'd like to move forward with introducing our fantastic speakers today. I'm very excited for this session and really appreciate the both of you joining us today. So to kick off, we're going to have Kim Godin from the National Circles Coordinator Program start us off with some great information. And then next up will be Anne Coleman, Manager of the Ontario Living Wage. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn things over to Kim.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining Anne and I in exploring workplace stability through the lens of socioeconomic inclusivity and through understanding the benefits of living wages. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, move this over. Okay. So like I said, we're really happy that all of you decided to be with us today, just to gain that greater understanding of what individuals and families who live in daily instability, under-resourced environments, and the working poor experience. By having a common understanding of economic class diversity within your business, you can come together and really create opportunities and solutions for stability within your workplaces. The behaviors, habits, and patterns of low-wage and entry-level employees often leave business owners and managers scratching their head, as we know. Do you have employees that you thought went to lunch and who didn't return? Do you have employees who are repeatedly late? Their rides didn't show, or the local transit system was running late, and I understand that that can be a challenge for your area. Or did they have difficulties with finding childcare? Most likely, these happenings are due to the diversity of economic class. I will briefly explore with you that environment of a person who has grown up in an environment like I described in under-resourced environments, have some barriers and challenges that need to be overcome for them to have that stability and success in the workplace. Our respective formative environments create mindsets, habits, and expectations within each of us. When our coworkers have different mindsets, habits, and expectations, it can create chaos in our workplace. But by exploring diversity through the lens of economic class, we can discover more about ourselves and our coworkers and what we can do to create more productivity, stability, and motivation within the workplace. You know, when we often look at diversity, we think of through the lens of race or gender, but rarely do we really think about the diversity through economic class. So sometimes we believe the entry-level employee are expendable. and easily to replace. However, we are letting a lot of money walk out the door only to get another employee with the same issues caused by the environment of instability. So again, I'm just going to have a brief overview. We've got to unpack a lot of information, and I encourage you near the end, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. Also, you heard that I'm the national coordinator and Lambton coordinator for Circles. Circles is an ending poverty initiative with the vision that everyone has enough money, meaning, and relationships to thrive. We seek to inspire and equip communities to reduce poverty and remove barriers that stand in the way. Circle strategies have been proven powerful and transformative by supporting people living in poverty with their goals of education, employment, all leading to life stabilization and full economic self-sufficiency. We really have the vision of breaking the cycle of persistent poverty while creating a deeper awareness and understanding. So the stability paradigm, I'll have some slides that we call mental models. They're just snapshot visuals. We found that a person's environment and resources determine the level of stability they are experiencing. And the same goes for organizations. There's personal stability and there's organizational stability. If an organization is experiencing degrees of instability, it can make it harder for us to tune in to employees who are also experiencing personal instability. In fact, isn't it true that our employees' level of stability affects us at work all the time? If they have stability, our organizations often have stability. If they are dealing with instability, especially daily, on an ongoing basis, we feel that impact. You can see the arrow is actually a two-way arrow. All three of these are connected and they influence the environment of work. When we look over at the workforce and we see hidden rules, language, engagement, and motivation, when we think about hidden rules, an individual brings with him or her the hidden rules of the class in which they were raised in. Schools and businesses operate on middle class norms and use those hidden rules of middle class. So oftentimes we will find that entry-level employee may not even understand the hidden rules of what the culture of the workplace is, breaking rules that they may not even know they're breaking, and feeling not connected, not engaged, and that leads to low motivation and retention issues. So the cost of turnover, this is a quick slide. I know I have, talking to business owners that know all about the cost of turnover, but just to pause for a moment and think about the data, the hard costs, the soft costs of all the things that you invest when you are hiring that entry-level worker. And there's a lot of costs that go in, not only the relationship, but the financial cost and the training that goes into onboarding an individual. So for example, if we take one employee at minimum wage or entry level, and we think about the hard and soft costs determining the annual cost of turnover, even for one employee, that could be a few thousand a year. Take a larger employer that has 10 or more employees, and then the significant increases start to begin with the cost of turnover. And then the large organization that has great turnover is into the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. So something to pause and think about in terms of that retention strategy and what you can do within the realm of your place of employment to have a greater understanding and that retention piece. Knowledge is a key form of privilege, as are social access, race, and money. How you spend your time determines your knowledge base to a large extent. So this really, it's the beginning of understanding about how the demands of our environment, and all our environments are different. The resources that we have at our disposal, again, the levels of different resources, and the relationships and knowledge that have shaped our thinking and how we see the world. So the next few slides, I'm going to just share in a little bit deeper in terms of what that daily instability and growing up in poverty may look like in terms of how your resources, your environment, and your relationships shape all of our thinking. So daily instability is to the extent to which an individual does without resources. So this mental model for instability, what it's like now, and hopefully you can see, Ashley and Amanda, just do a little bit of a check. On the bottom, I can see my tab running across. Can the viewers actually see the bottom of the pie?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, good stuff, thank you. So it's about survival. When you don't have money or power or stuff, relationships are key to survival. If you are lost and called me for directions, I'm going to say, where are you now? The timeline is immediate, here now. This mental model was first created by approximately 50 individuals in Ohio who lived in daily instability. You can see in the bottom, Phil DeBall is from AHA Process. This curriculum is through the AHA Process research organizations where Bridges Out of Poverty was developed. And Phil asked the group of these 50 individuals living in daily instability, what is it like now? What is in your world? And so they drew all these aspects within the pie that described what they encounter and deal with in their daily life. This model, of course, would be somewhat different by region, race, and cultural history, but it has common features that appear in all situations. For example, transportation, as I had mentioned earlier, always shows up. Because when you're in poverty and you cannot afford a reliable car, which is very, very common, we support a lot of our folks that are in our program with transportation issues. And when we are raised in the middle class, it's quite common for us to have a CAA membership, or our children have CAA membership, or roadside assistance programs. But if you're living in poverty or under-resourced environments and you happen to have a used car and it breaks down, who do you call? Well, you're probably going to call someone called Uncle Ray. And Uncle Ray is going to come and hook up your vehicle with chains, haul it away, and then you're back at home. Well, what happens if you don't treat Uncle Ray that well? What if happens people in your family, in your environment, are mad at you because of how you're treating Uncle Ray, even if he's not a good guy? He comes and helps you out in crisis, because relationships matter in the world of daily instability and survival. It's just a little analogy because it's so true that we hear about that negotiation and trading off when it comes to sharing their resources. So if they need a ride to work, they may be negotiating with their neighborhood or their friends and family that are also living in under-resourced environments. Can I get a ride to the food bank? Can I have somebody in my neighborhood watch my children? How do I get to work if it's a blizzard out and the bus system is shut down? Lots of negotiation. So we really have to kind of really think about the journey that they go through before they even show up for their place of work or employment. As you can see within the picture, lots of areas that they have to negotiate. So this is really a bigger picture in a few moments of why relationships are so important and critical in surviving poverty. We also deliver a curriculum called Getting Ahead in the Just Getting By world, where they take about 12-week curriculum to really explore the impacts of poverty and under-resourced environments have had. And through that, they also develop a plan of change for a better future story. And that also includes upgrading education, employment, and looking at all these factors. And one woman in the group, when we were having a discussion, said, draw a big thick line around this perimeter and pie, because when you're in it, it is really difficult to work really, really hard to move forward out of that when you're constantly dealing with under resources in these areas. So what pain does that instability create for employees and businesses? Relationships needed for survival take precedent over work. Relationships take precedent over work, and friends help solve problems. So when we, again, I'll just use a few stories from the program that we help people move forward in. We worked with a fella who came from generational poverty. He had dropped out of high school. So when he had entered into circles, of course, we worked with our partners, education partners, and he was able to go back and get his GED, which is an equivalent to grade 12. We placed him in his first entry-level position. He was working well, the employer liked him, and then he just disappeared. So he was gone for a few weeks. And of course, all of us were distraught and worried and wondered what happened to him. And when he resurfaced and re-engaged, we said, what happened? Like, where did you go? And he said this, my mother called and my sister had left. We're in the Tyranny, Lambton area. We're about 3 hours from Toronto. She ran away to the streets of Toronto. And my mother asked if I could go find her. We had some connections and I knew that I could probably track her down. So that's where he went, without calling, without explaining, just up and left because of that environment of instability. So when he returned, of course, that's a crisis. And of course, there's different ways to approach that crisis. But for them in that moment, that was the decision. He didn't give it any thought, just to leave everything and go find his sister, of course. But through our coaching and thought process and engaging the employer, really good understanding took place. And the good news about that story is that individual now is well on his way in a solid apprenticeship and a little bit more stability in his life. But again, just a quick example to share that these things happen, and oftentimes businesses are left going, what happened there? Well, this is a big slide, which I also actually can leave with you for people to reference, because I know we have limited time this morning. But this is a big picture of poverty and the poverty research continuum. And as you can see, the causes of poverty are complex. And this is a good snapshot of the individual, community, exploitation, and political and economic structures. So when we think about Canadian poverty, some sobering stats that 1 in 7 or 4.9 million people in Canada live in poverty. 1.3 million children live in the conditions of poverty. That's 1 in 5 children, and about 21% of single mothers in Canada raise their children in poverty. With low-income families spending more than half their income on rent and often struggling to afford food, basic necessities, transportation, and childcare. And as we know through this pandemic, food costs have continued to rise. I just heard a report on the global news that they're anticipating more prices in fresh fruits and vegetables increasing by 4 to 5%. And then in the coming year, we know gas prices. We've seen all of us impacted with our food and gas and hydro and just living costs, let alone somebody that's already living in under-resourced environments, layering on the additional expenses that this pandemic has created. At the individual level, those education, or lack of education or lack of job experience, single parenthood, lack of knowledge of the hidden rules of work, the systemic issues. We see racism across all causes, overrepresentation of Black and Indigenous children within our child welfare system. The justice system incarcerates more Black and Indigenous people than white. We know this with all the research coming out. Community conditions, precarious employment. We think about our PSWs and other, early childhood educators and other sectors that contract work. Lack of living wages, lack of transportation to those jobs. We call it the last mile, where the bus system ends, but yet the job, and especially in our area, we have Chemical Valley with incredible trades just beyond where the transit system ends. We think about the competitive workforce, The workforce development boards have released employer surveys that in the next 5 years, 85% of employers will demand some sort of post-education for that entry-level position. So you think about the conditions of a higher education, the competitive workforce, the barriers that people face. We know people living in poverty face these barriers and have a lack of social connection, sometimes needing that additional support that we have within the middle class of, we know a person who knows a person, and being able to connect and refer to community partners and access the supports we need to post-education. So just to think about those things, of course, exploitation, we all know about that. The payday lenders, which is a huge trap that drills people more into financial debt, drug and sex trade. And even when the pandemic hit, then we saw the COVID scams, all layering on people that are already in that survival mode. So we need a multitude of effective strategies across this continuum. You know, we think about the political and economic structures, what policies need to be in place that affect, all of us, but especially people that are living in lower resource environments. Because we know it's a collective community approach that involves all of us to improve health and wellness. When education levels rise within our communities and crime decreases, all of us benefit from a healthier social determinants of health and conditions for all of us to live in. So we hear lots of times, not my backyard, but our backyard. We need to care about that. We need to care about all the people within our communities so we all benefit, and especially the retention with employers who we've heard here too, sometimes are having a really hard time recruiting people for some of their positions. So tyranny of the moment, this is just, again, just a high level understanding that poverty and all its related concerns require so much mental energy that the poor have less remaining brain power to devote to other areas of life. When your bandwidth is loaded, you are just more likely not to notice things. You're more likely not to resist things you ought to resist. You're more likely to forget things. You're going to have less patience, less attention to devote to your children when they come home from school. And it is because their energy is on keeping that destabilized world stable. So basic needs, food, shelter, avoiding evictions, food security, making sure children have enough items for when they go back to school, like 2 pairs of shoes instead of 1. What about all the food and snacks and extracurricular for their children? So lots of things happening within their world. So that tyranny of the moment can really give the time horizon of one day. So it's about the immediate. It's about solving the problems. They're great, incredible problem solvers, but it is about solving the problems in the immediate moment. So think about when your bandwidth is loaded down and how you handle change. So the tyranny of the moment, when we think about individuals, institutions, and communities, this is what it looks like at that individual level, living paycheck to paycheck. Institutions, grant to grant. Communities, annual budgets to annual budgets. So it, again, that tyranny of the moment can really stop us from being proactive, looking down the road of 2 or 3 years, or planning, if we need some research or development, or looking at expanding our programs. The same thing for people. It holds them into the here and now versus that proactivity and reaching those future goals and dreams that all of us have at an individual and at our businesses and our community levels. It's a very reactive way of living. A mental model for business instability. So like individuals, we can also analyze businesses who often experience varying levels of stability and instability that affect employee retention, performance, and company profits. So maybe it's a decline from management or sales or market shares or outdated technology. Companies end up operating in the tyranny of the moment, solving problems for today. So this is just an illustration of what a company can go through to dealing with that daily instability. So that employee turnover, dissatisfaction, external hires, communication breakdown, customer dissatisfaction, everyone for themselves, chasing after problems. So you can see and relate to that survival mode as well for businesses. We've talked about transportation. So what pain does instability create for employers and businesses? Again, this is so significant. You know, the price of gas, walking to the bus stops, think about the weather, business lines, delays. And so we do think about this in all of our communities when we're supporting transportation needs. In our Circles program, we hosted a business breakfast, and through the funds raised of people sharing their stories, their hopes, their future dreams, we raised funds to launch a microcredit loan program for the people we support that are able to access an interest-free loan for those used cars and maintenance of those cars at a reasonable return. Again, no interest. Sometimes people have a hard time getting their first loans from the bank if they've had poor credit, because from the other side of the causes of poverty. So again, just some real interesting ways that we can support people. We've heard of rideshare programs, also employers, you know, being able to provide taxi vouchers in times of need, and it really starts to reduce that absenteeism. Ooh, what happened here? Something is glitching, so I'm going to stop sharing. Go back to my share, and here we go. Oh, what's happening here? Just a second. Sorry, everybody. On my screen, I may need some help here. I need this one. This current slide, it keeps coming up. It's kind of stuck on this slide. That's not good. Sorry. This is the one we want. Let's share here. There we go. So this slide from current slide, what is happening? See, we had some technical issues and now it's my turn.
That's okay, Kim. We can actually see it when you pull it up on your screen.
You can see.
We can see the small version of it. There we go.
Okay, so want me to just to keep it at this? Can everybody see this?
Yep, that works.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. So this just really highlights the qualities of people that have overcome daily instability, for employers to think about the strengths that these individuals bring to a place of employment. We think about strategic and problem solving and persistent and strong willpower, entertaining, storytelling, risk taker, creative, inclusive, thinker, passionate, loyal, strengths and loyalties. We hear this a lot down the road when we support people for a long period of time, 2 to 4 years. And within our program, we recruit middle-class allies as mentor coaches to support people that are moving forward out of poverty. And they've always said the loyalty, when we build authentic relationships and problem solve and really understand what they're going through, the return on loyalty and retention and investment is huge. It is absolutely huge. You know, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was out in Prince Edward Island doing a full day of Bridges Out of Poverty, we had the head of HR for the service industry in the room. His name was Matt. And we got talking about barriers to employment, like access to good dental work. And oftentimes, if you have had low access to healthy foods as a child, rotting teeth and decaying teeth become significant in your adulthood if you haven't been able to have regular checkups, and it becomes a real barrier to employment. And he had described about how when they were recruiting their mass employees to come in Prince Edward Island for their seasonal work that the one individual they really liked, but he really had a lot of dental issues. And so Matt had built that trust with him and said, why don't I put you on the night shift? I'm going to advance some of your vacation time in cash so that you can actually have some of the restoration done on your teeth beyond the benefits that they were allotted. And through that, that individual was able to have his teeth restored, keep onboarding and learning during the night shift so that he could get his work during the day. And Matt said 2 years later, he's one of the best employees that they've had, retention, loyal, and strengths. So another quick, analogy just to show some creativity that the head of HR was able to work with his individual and the cost of return, not only on their self-esteem and who they are as an individual, but then the return on investment for that business. So when we think about mental model for business stability, we think about, employee retention, promoting from within, effective communication, performance and enhancement coaching, productivity, continuous improvement, customer retention, customer satisfaction, teamwork, and reliability on attendance. So in contrast, many times when businesses are profitable and growing, we see the elements in this mental model in play. So we really want to think about how do we create stability, productivity, and profitability in stable business models when you are onboarding people that may be coming to those entry-level positions from daily instability. So I know that was a real quick overview of information.
That was fantastic.
Pass it over to Anne, but if we just leave this for a moment, if people could see my website there of circlescanada.com, you'll find out more information about our initiative, as well as we are Circles Canada on the Facebook. So if you want to see us on Facebook and just check us out, you can scroll the pages and see more about us. And I just want to thank you, Ashley and Jim, for having us here for a quick conversation.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Kim. Ashley and I have actually taken training with Kim before. I don't know if you want to leave her screen up for a little bit longer, just in case anybody would like to write down her contact information. We can also send it out afterwards. I just wanted to comment something. So through your training before, something that always sticks with me every time I see Kim speak is the resiliency of people living in poverty and how many extra challenges they have to work through in order to sit at the same table of someone that maybe is not experiencing that level of poverty. So just very impactful, very motivating. So I appreciate all of the information that you're sharing. And like I mentioned earlier, and Kim mentioned, this is usually training that she stretches out over a couple of days and really dives deep into. So this really is just a snapshot. I'm just wondering if you can share, Kim, any specific concrete ideas. I know you provided a couple where businesses or workplaces could remove some barriers or challenges to help some people in these situations overcome those things. Like one of the situations I think of is workplace potlucks. You don't always realize that not everyone is able to participate in those level of things. So is there other examples like that that you have where it would create a more inclusive workplace to help those individuals participate and feel welcomed and situated?
Absolutely, Amanda. Thank you for that question. So I know this feels like a speed round, but relationships, number one, onboarding, having time to really understand who your employees are, if it's through activities onboarding, but really in a respectful, dignified way, just really understanding that relationship and building that trusting relationship is key. Language is another one. So really concrete, we think about hidden rules. If I went from the city of London, a big urban center, to the County of Lambton. Again, me navigating and having some experience, but if I was coming in as an entry level, I may not know all those little tiny nuances of what to say, what not to say, what I can do inside the lunchroom. Can I eat my lunch there? Can I not? Things that we may take for granted. For example, my daughter just asked me, she starts a new job Thursday in retail. Now she's worked at the public library and she's worked at the vaccination clinics. So me being assuming that she would know what onboarding is going to look like, she said to me, why do you have to be there 15 minutes early? Simple things like that, because I'm like, your shift starts at 4, we should be there at 3:45. Why? Because the employer expects to have your belongings hung up, that you've gone to the washroom, that you're ready, so that at your shift at 4 o'clock, you're ready. Those small little things that we may assume people know, they don't. Those hidden rules. Food and snacks are huge. So, for example, I think about recently, I was saying that we've been under a lot of construction. Our employer has provided pizza days for everybody. So not potluck, not me as an employee expected to bring in food, but a little reserved money to say, okay, everybody, there's pizza in the lunchroom, go help yourself. And then also, if there is an opportunity, and I know small employers and large employers, depending on their budget, but having some free granola bars or fresh fruit, we often do that in the lunchroom for everyone to have, or some kind of those programs that you can put through the health and wellness committee. Those are really significant things that help people. And then if you see an employee that is struggling with lateness, maybe just to have a mentor, coach, or somebody within HR to say, hey, we've really noticed this and we want to make sure that you have all the things you need to get here. Tell me about your transportation. Are you okay with, possibly ride sharing with somebody? So being really creative, but ultimately it comes back to developing a culture of understanding and relationship to be able to have people trust the employer in sharing some of their personal barriers.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kim. And I think this topic is becoming even more important as we see stats come up showing like the debt levels that Canadians are carrying and the greater impact that the pandemic has had on people and their financials, that this is kind of bleeding into other classes too. It's not just people that are living below the poverty line. So there's a lot of information that is transferable across many staff. So I think this was great. Thank you so much, Kim. That was amazing. I'm going to turn things over to Anne Coleman. So as I mentioned, last week was Living Wage Week here in Ontario, and Anne is our guru in that area. So she's going to share all kinds of great information about that. Again, if anybody has any questions for either Kim or Anne, please put them in the question and answer box. We do have time at the end of the session that we can address those. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thanks, Ashley, Amanda, and Larissa for hosting this webinar. I'm really pleased to be here to be able to speak with everyone about the living wage. Let me just share my screen. And thank you, Kim, for such a great presentation. I'm really fascinated by all of the information that you were sharing with us, and I would love to learn more at some point. So thank you so much. And I think really Kim's presentation sets up the conversation for the living wage very nicely. A lot of the challenges that Kim was addressing for employees who are earning low wages or living in poverty is really something that we tend to talk about in the living wage. So I'm really excited to be following that conversation. So just to get things started, the Ontario Living Wage Network is a not-for-profit organization. We've been around informally since about 2014. There were a handful of local community groups at that time that were calculating living wages for their own community, and some even had their own employer certification programs at that point. They really just wanted a place to further the conversation about the living wage in the province. So the network was formed, and we've grown a lot since that time. In 2017, we were really pleased to launch our provincial employer certification program. And we actually just became incorporated as a not-for-profit in February of 2020. We did so federally under the name Living Wage Canada. And although we're just working in Ontario right now, we have a great community of practice right across the country, and are really looking forward to having other provinces join in with us over the next couple of years. So just so we're all on the same page, a living wage is the hourly wage a worker needs to earn to cover not just their basic expenses, but to have a little bit extra to participate in community. It's really meant to be a tool that employers can use so that they know that they're paying their employees a decent wage, and a tool to reduce poverty through paid work. So I want to take a moment here to actually just say a thank you to the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network. We work closely with local living wage groups or poverty reduction groups across the province. And these groups will help us to gather data for their own local living wage calculation. This really supports us. Right now we're quite small, it's just myself and one colleague. So I don't necessarily have the time to go out and gather the data for the whole province. But it also helps us to make sure we're painting an accurate picture of expenses in a community. So when we're gathering or when we're doing our living wage calculations, we take into account basic needs. So things like housing, transportation. This is a key factor in Niagara. The region is pretty large, and the local poverty reduction network has made it really clear that commuting is a big concern within the different communities in the region. And so for our calculation, we make the assumption that every adult will need a car to get to and from work because of all the commuting that happens within the region. So that's a really big expense. We also take into account food. And then there's the participation part of the calculation. So things like recreation, after school activities for children, continuing education for adults is another key factor. So these are the little extras, and makes the living wage not just about surviving, but having that little bit extra. That being said, I'll be very clear that it doesn't cover savings for retirement or debt repayment, savings for children's education. So it's still a fairly basic wage. So local communities will gather expenses for either a family or an individual in a community, and they'll send them along to me. I'll throw them into our calculator, and the calculator takes into account income from government, which means tax credit. So things like the Canada Child Benefit. There was a new, in 2019, the provincial government introduced the CARE credit, or child care tax credit, which is a big support for families. So that things like that are all included in the calculation. And then we also take into account taxes, EI and CP premiums. So all of that's taken into account, and it comes up with a living wage rate for us. So last week, we were really pleased to announce updated living wage rates for 22 communities across the province, and a brand new calculation, first-time calculation in Peel region. The 2021 living wage rate for Niagara is $18.90 an hour. So not only do we calculate living wages, but we also recognize employers who pay a living wage. So I'm really pleased to say that we now have almost 400 certified living wage employers across the province. I think we might reach 400 by the end of this week, or if not next week for sure. So very exciting. Over 60 of those are located within Niagara region, and employers in our program are from all different sectors. the commitment that these employers make is that they will pay all of their direct and indirect employees at least the living wage. So direct employees is pretty straightforward. It's anyone you're directly paying a wage or salary to. Indirect employees refers to any third-party contracted workers that work for your business on a regular basis. So we've got a lot of questions about this part of our program. This is, I think, something that's really important. We have a number of employers who are certified that already were paying their direct employees, or almost all of them, at least the living wage. But where they really made a change in or a difference in the community was by including a living wage clause in their third-party contract or contracts when they came up for renewal. So we're only looking at people that would work for your business or organization for more than 120 hours in a year. And we tend to find pockets of low-wage work in areas like cleaning services, security, landscaping, food service. And so, typically the financial burden on an employer, or burden's maybe not the right term, but the cost for the employer is actually a lot less than they might guess. And a lot of contracted workers are, considered to be very skilled labor and are already paid well above the living wage rate. So with our certification program, employers who are certified are making a commitment to reach what we call our champion level of recognition. That's the full implementation of the program, but we do allow for a phased-in implementation because we want to be able to recognize the commitment employers are making, even if they need a year or two to get to the champion level. So the base requirement is that that of our supporter level, where all direct full-time employees are earning at least the living wage. The next level is the leader level, where all of your direct, full, and part-time employees are earning at least the living wage. And then again, the champion level that includes those third-party contracts. So I wanted to speak to you a little bit about the employee perspective of the living wage. Last week, as has been mentioned, was Living Wage Week, and I was really honored to be part of a couple different events where we had people with lived experience speak and share their story. I think it was really impactful hearing from a worker in Waterloo Region who at one point was working full-time at minimum wage and ended up being homeless and had to live in the shelter for a while until she was able to figure things out and come up with a new plan. She ended up going back to school and actually became employed with one of our certified living wage employers. And so she's doing much better at this point. We also heard from another really great person who again shared their story in Simcoe County. And the thing that stood out to me was that she said that she was now able to dream for the future, which just was really, I think, really impactful. And hearing directly from employees and from people that have seen a wage increase because of the living wage, I think really tells a story about why we have this program and why it's important for workers in Ontario. And if you're interested in hearing more direct stories, there's a really great video on the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network living wage page that has comments or from employees that are right in Niagara region. So when employees or when people are living in poverty, we heard a lot about the effects of that from Kim in her presentation. And one of the things that we hear from our employees, our employees that are part of the program on a regular basis, is that they're healthier, that there's less stress, that they don't have to make those negotiations or make those decisions between putting food on the table or putting gas in the car. And again, something that means that hopefully they will have an easier time getting to work on time, or become a more reliable employee in that way. So I also think the employer perspective is a really important part of this conversation. Kelly Watson from the Muskoka Brewery did an excellent presentation again last week for the Muskoka district, and she was, the Muskoka Brewery has been a certified employer since about 2016. They really went through a big change in their business to become a living wage employer at that time. And Kelly says that a healthy employee is a productive employee, and a happy employee is an engaged employee. So she went on to talk about how having productive, engaged employees has really helped to make her business stand out, and has been, of a huge benefit. I wanted at this point to share a video from Helmi Ansari. He is the owner of Grosh International and a fantastic speaker. And I will admit that employers in our program tend to be quite passionate about the living wage, and Helmi exemplifies this. He's a great speaker and can really speak to the employer or the business case about the living wage much better than I can. I was having some technical difficulties, so I will include that in the chat link to the video in the chat
And
box.
I think we might be able to share it now if you would like me to give it a shot. Okay.
Perfect. Do I need to stop sharing my screen?
About 10 to 12 years ago, my wife and I started a small business out of our basement where she was selling loose leaf teas, door to door. That business over several years transformed itself, and today Grosh is one of the more well-known manufacturers of coffee and tea accessories internationally. Grosh is opening its first physical retail store in the city of Guelph. The retail industry is notorious for being one of the lowest paying industries you can have, where store managers are making barely over minimum wage. When we're out recruiting and when people find out we're a living wage employer, the quality and the quantity of candidates that we're getting applying to our retail store for a position has just been phenomenal. When we say that we are going to be a good community citizen, we have to look at the people that work with us day in and day out. If those people are having difficulty in putting food on the table or paying their rent, we really have to go back and ask ourselves, are we being true to our values? By helping them alleviate these concerns of taking care of the basics. Now, we're not talking about a luxury wage, we're talking about a living wage. They're able to focus on their work. As a small business, as a team that's trying to compete against larger businesses, having a team of highly engaged and dedicated people is our greatest competitive advantage. In terms of challenges, we had people that were on the very low end of the pay scale that saw a larger bump. When that happens, there will be people in larger organizations that may not see a bump or a large bump in their pay. That creates a little bit of conflict. As that happens, it's important to have engagement, consultation, and discussions to make sure that all of these are addressed as early as possible, with as many people as possible, to make sure these things are done very smoothly. When you make that investment in your people, you're telling your people that you actually care about them as human beings. When we look at the cumulative impact of business around the world, we see that a lot of business ends up creating a burden on society, from an environmental standpoint, from a social standpoint, the factories that are run, to how the supply chains are managed, in spite of all the wonderful mission statements and vision statements that these businesses have. So I was looking to be able to demonstrate to small and large businesses that you can actually create and run a business that is ethical in how it's run, that treats its people well, that produces quality products, and by virtue of doing good, it is more successful.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for getting that working, Amanda. That's wonderful. Okay, let me just share the last little bit here of my presentation. So, you know, one of the things that we hear regularly from our certified employers is that, you know, particularly the ones that have really had to make a change to their business model, is that once they began paying a living wage, they did see much higher staff retention rates. There's a bit of savings there with hiring and training staff. Helmi has said that it often will can take up to a year for a new hire to really learn their job and really, you know, be at their peak performance. So if you're seeing a lot of turnover, then that's clearly something that, you know, is impacting the productivity that's going on in your workplace. I'll also mention that when low-wage workers begin to receive a living wage, that little bit of extra money that they have is something that is really just going back into the local economy and is supporting local businesses. So for anyone out there that is maybe considering becoming a living wage employer, I would encourage you to reach out to me. You can do that through our website, livingwage.ca. We have an employer guide online that gives all of the details of our employer certification program, the information, most of which I just shared with you. There's a place to reach out and express interest, or I will share my email address on the next slide, so you're welcome just to reach out directly. And if you let me know that you were part of this presentation, then you know, there's usually a phone conversation that I like to have with all new employers, but it just will help me know that you already have a, you know, maybe a better idea than most people that are reaching out to me. New employers that become certified in our program are added to our online employer directory. We have a map as well. And so we have just launched an updated version of this. So employers, it's searchable by sector and location. I'd encourage everyone to take a look at that new map on our website. And employers have use of our logo. They have we have window decals if that's appropriate for you. And we announce all new certified employers through social media and in the Niagara region through media as well. The Niagara Poverty Reduction Network helps with that process, which is, again, a fantastic support for us and for employers in the region. And the local media has been very supportive of living wage employers. There's a local radio station that announces all new certified employers in the region. So I'd just like to end off by saying that the living wage is something that's good for people, for business, and for the community. And I would be very pleased to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Honestly, I could talk about this stuff and listen to the both of you speak all afternoon. I just want to take a moment to, again, thank both of you for sharing your resources and your time with us this afternoon. I think these topics are incredibly important, especially as our labor force is really changing. Our local labor markets are really changing. I was sitting at a table earlier this week where some stats are coming out showing that our unemployment rates are dropping and our participation rates are increasing, and they're almost back in line with what they were prior to the pandemic. And we actually have an extra 10,000 people working in the Niagara region. So with the number of jobs that are going unfilled, that's just demonstrating to me that businesses are going to have to be more competitive and switch their mindset to what is it that we can offer to someone that our competitors can't. And these are some solutions that can directly support businesses with that. So in the essence of time, we don't want to keep anybody late. If anybody does have any questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to put you in touch with Kim or Anne. And then we also are going to send out a survey after this. So you can share your feedback on what you thought about this session. We're always looking for ways to improve, so we would appreciate that. We're also looking to continue this employer learning and resource series. So we're taking December off so everyone can, work on celebrating and fitting in all those extra networking meetings and things like that. So we'll be back in the new year, and we are looking to hear what kinds of topics everybody would like to focus on so that we can secure some speakers that are in line with what the business community needs. So with that being said, again, thank you so much to Anne and Kim. We appreciate the time and the resources and your expertise. This was a fantastic session. And I would like to thank everyone for attending. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.